The underground parking garage beneath the mountain lodge swallowed sound like a tomb. 11:51 in the evening. Elena Voss pushed through the entrance door, and the October wind that had chased her for 17 blocks finally released her into this cold concrete cavern. Her dark hair, soaked through, hung in black ropes against her pale face. Mascara ran in streaks like war paint washing away. The delivery uniform clinging to her body, a cheap polyester thing in faded teal, was soaked not just with October rain but with her own sweat, her own blood. A gash opened her temple, still bleeding, still fresh. She pressed her left hand against the concrete wall, leaving a dark smear behind, and the cold of the stone bit into her palm like teeth. In her right hand, trembling so hard she could barely grip it, she held a letter. White paper, official stamps, bold red text that read final notice. $150,000. 7 days. Her daughter's heart surgery. Micah. Just 6 years old, and her heart was dying inside her small chest, and the surgery was the only thing keeping her alive, and the money was due in 7 days, and Elena Voss had exactly $5 in her pocket. 5. Not 50. Not 500. $5, crumpled and worn, in the back pocket of jeans she had worn for 3 days straight because she had no time to change them. She did not see the 3 men in black suits standing near the black Mercedes. She did not see Rocco with his hand frozen halfway to his weapon. She did not see Nino dropping his cigarette, the ember still glowing red against the oil-stained concrete. She did not see Alessandro Caruso turn from the Mercedes door, his body moving with the precision of a predator who had learned long ago that wasted motion was wasted power. Alessandro was 34 years old and looked like a man sculpted from something harder than flesh. His dark hair swept back from his forehead, expensive and deliberate. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored to his broad shoulders, the fabric worth more than Elena's monthly rent. An Italian leather belt. A watch on his wrist that cost more than her car. But it was his eyes that held the weight of his danger, dark eyes, storm gray in certain light, eyes that had watched 17 men die and felt nothing because feeling was a luxury he had traded away years ago. A thin scar ran from his left eye to his cheekbone, a white line of old violence, a map of survival. He turned, and his eyes locked onto Elena Voss. She looked up, and the world stopped moving. He saw everything in one moment. The blood on her face. The final notice letter shaking in her hand. The way her body swayed like something that had forgotten how to stand. The way her breath came in visible gasps, each one a small cloud in the cold air. She was thin, too thin, the kind of thin that came from skipping meals, from survival, from choices between eating and paying rent. Her eyes were green, bright green, the only thing about her that seemed alive. Everything else was breaking down, like a machine running on fumes, like something that had already lost so much that losing more seemed almost inevitable. Alessandro took one step forward. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete, and the sound echoed through the garage like a gunshot in a cathedral. Elena's head snapped up. Her green eyes widened. For a moment, she looked like a small animal caught in a trap, assessing the hunter who had just appeared. "You are hurt," he said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, with the weight of an accent that had never quite left his tongue even though he had lived in Los Angeles for 15 years. Elena did not answer. She pressed herself harder against the wall, her breathing shallow, rapid. Rocco and Nino exchanged a look, a glance that said everything without words. In 9 years of working for Alessandro Caruso, they had never heard him speak to a stranger with anything other than menace or indifference. They had never heard him say the word hurt like it mattered. "The letter," he said, taking another step forward. Slow. Measured. Unhurried. "May I see it?" Elena's fingers tightened on the paper. "No," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, trembling like a candle in the wind, shattered like glass. "No, I will pay it. I will find a way. I always find a way." "I did not ask if you would pay it," Alessandro said. "I asked to see it." Something in his tone, not kindness, exactly, but the absence of cruelty, made her hand loosen. She did not move toward him. She simply let her arm fall, the letter dangling at her side like a thing that had already defeated her. Alessandro reached out, and his hand took the letter from hers. Their fingers did not touch. He unfolded the paper with deliberate care, his dark eyes scanning the text. $150,000. Surgical facilities. Pediatric cardiac specialist. 7 days. A child's name, Micah Santos. He folded the letter slowly and looked at Elena. Your daughter. It was not a question. My daughter, Elena confirmed, her voice barely a sound. 6 years old, he said, reading from the letter. Congenital heart defect. The surgery is her only chance at survival. Elena nodded. She could not speak. Her throat had closed up like a door slamming shut. And you have 7 days to find $150,000. Again, not a question. A statement of fact, delivered with the tone of a man who understood impossible odds because he had spent his entire life defying them. I have worked every shift available, Elena said, the words spilling out now like she could not stop them, like she had been holding them in so long they had to escape. I work as a delivery driver at night and as a waitress during the day, and I clean houses on weekends, and I sell plasma twice a month, and I still cannot, her voice cracked. She stopped. The parking garage was silent except for the sound of the October wind outside, rattling against the concrete structure like something trying to get in, trying to reach her. What is your name? Alessandro asked. Elena, she said. Elena Voss. He held the final notice letter in his hand, this official document of her desperation, this piece of paper that represented everything she had fought for and could not afford. He looked at it again, his jaw tightening slightly, a small movement that Rocco recognized because he had seen it before, years ago, in very different circumstances. Marcus Webb, Alessandro said quietly. It was not a question. He was reading something in the letter, some name, some official signature. Does that name mean something to you? Elena's entire body went rigid. The blood drained from her face, and for a moment Rocco thought she might collapse right there against the concrete wall. He is why I am here, she whispered. He told me that if I did not run his deliveries, if I did not transport the packages he gave me, he would make sure Micah never gets the surgery. He controls the hospital files. He controls access. He said he could keep her alive on the list indefinitely, and she would die waiting. Alessandro folded the letter with precise, controlled movements. And you have been running these deliveries. I had to, Elena said. He gave me no choice. There is always a choice, Alessandro said. You chose your daughter's life over your own safety. That is not a small thing. He turned to Rocco. Take her upstairs. Find the doctor. Have her injuries treated. Give her clean clothes. Bring her something to eat. He paused. His dark eyes moved back to Elena. You will spend tonight in one of the guest rooms. Tomorrow, we will discuss what happens next. Elena stared at him. Who are you? She asked, and there was something in her voice, fear and confusion and a desperate, fragile hope that she was trying not to feel. Alessandro did not answer. He simply turned back to the Mercedes, the letter still in his hand, and Rocco moved forward to guide Elena away from the wall, away from the garage, up into the mountain lodge where light existed and warmth existed and things were no longer falling apart, at least not in this moment, at least not while this man was deciding what her future would be. But what she did not know, could not possibly have known, was that the man holding her daughter's debt collector letter was the most dangerous person in 3 states. And his involvement in her life would change everything. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, in a penthouse apartment overlooking the Los Angeles skyline, Marcus Webb was making a phone call. His voice was smooth, practiced, wrapped in the confidence of someone who had never experienced real consequences. She is missing, he told his mother, Cordelia Blackwood, on the other end of the line. Elena. The delivery driver. She did not show up for tonight's run. There was silence on the other end. Then Cordelia's voice, cold and calculated like a chess player studying the board. Find her, she said. And if she has talked to anyone, if she has said anything about our arrangement, we will make sure that little girl of hers never sees another birthday. Do you understand me?" Marcus understood. He hung up the phone and looked out at the city lights, confident that he had covered his tracks, confident that Elena Voss was just one small woman with no one to help her, no one to stand against the power he and his mother wielded. He did not know that Elena had just stumbled into the only shelter that could protect her. He did not know that 17 years of rage, dormant and waiting, had just found a target. He did not know that by tomorrow morning, everything was going to change. 6 hours and 47 minutes earlier, before the blood, before the man in shadows, before everything changed, Elena Voss sat on the edge of a single bed in a studio apartment on Magnolia Street and counted the money in her wallet. $5. Not 500. Not 50. 5. She held the bills, 2 singles, 3 ones, between her thumb and index finger like they were the most fragile thing in the world. Because they were. These $5 had to stretch until Thursday. $5 to buy food that would not spoil, food that could fill a 6-year-old boy's stomach without making his heart work harder than it already had to work every single moment of every single day. The apartment was cold. The thermostat had frozen at 62 degrees since October arrived, and Elena had stopped calling the landlord because calling meant being home long enough to answer the door, and being home meant not earning money. On the nightstand, under a lamp with a bulb so dim it barely cast shadows, sat a hospital bill folded and refolded so many times the creases had worn through the paper. Valve replacement surgery. The words were printed in bold letters that seemed to grow darker every time she looked at them. $150,000. The deadline was stamped in red. 7 days. She had been saving for 2 years. 2 years of double shifts, of eating leftover bread from the restaurant's dumpster, of skipping her own meals so Micah could have seconds, of borrowing money from people she knew could not afford to lend it. 2 years of this, and she had managed to save $8,000. $150,000 minus $8,000 left a gap so wide it might as well have been a chasm. It might as well have been impossible. In the next room, separated by a paper-thin wall, Micah was still asleep. Elena could hear his breathing, shallow, sometimes catching, that little pause that happened when his heart was working too hard. He was 6 years old. He had his father's dark eyes, though his father had been gone for so long that Micah did not remember him, did not understand that the reason he got tired climbing stairs was the same reason his father had disappeared. Some men, Elena had learned, could not handle the burden of a sick child. Some men chose leaving over love. She leaned over and kissed the top of her son's head. His skin was warm but not feverish. His pajamas, hand-me-downs from a cousin's cousin, were damp with sweat from his restless sleep. She did not wake him. She simply stood there in the darkness, watching his small chest rise and fall, each breath a small miracle she had come to count like prayer beads. And then she left for work. The red scooter was parked outside, dented on the front panel from an accident 3 months ago that she did not have money to fix. The insurance did not cover it, the repair shop wanted $400, so the dent stayed. Everything about the scooter told the story of her life, held together with hope and duct tape, broken in ways both visible and invisible, still running because it had to run, because the alternative was stopping, and she could not afford to stop. At 6:53 in the morning, the streets of Los Angeles were still half asleep. The sky was gray, that particular shade of gray that comes just before dawn breaks, when the world is neither night nor day but something in between, something vulnerable. Elena's breath came out in small clouds as she kicked the scooter to life. The engine wheezed like it was waking up from a long illness. She had already checked her 3 delivery apps, Food Dash, Quick Deliver, and City Run. She had 15 delivery orders waiting, all flagged as high priority, all promising bonuses if completed within the time window. High priority. Everyone's emergency was high priority. No one understood that her emergency was higher. The first delivery took her to a downtown office building where bankers were arriving early, caffeine already flowing through their veins, impatience already settling into their shoulders. She picked up an $87 coffee order, for different lattes with different milk alternatives, 2 specialty cappuccinos, one black coffee with exactly 2 ice cubes and a precise measurement of cream. She delivered it. The businessman who received it did not look up from his phone. He did not tip. He simply took the coffee carrier from her hands and walked away, already forgetting her existence. By 9 in the morning, Elena had completed 6 deliveries and earned $19.73. She had invested $5 in gasoline. She had not eaten. Her stomach felt hollow, but she was used to hollow. The lunch rush came at noon. A restaurant on 5th Street had a catering order for 40 people, 3 large salads, 7 sandwiches, roasted vegetables in sealed containers. She arrived to pick it up and was told to wait while the kitchen finished plating. 20 minutes passed. 30. The restaurant's air conditioning was aggressive, and she began to shiver in her thin uniform jacket. Then her phone buzzed. The customer had cancelled. The order was no longer needed. She would receive no compensation for the wait, no bonus, no payment at all. The restaurant would not even give her the food, liability, they said, even though it was already prepared. She left hungry. This was not unusual. The afternoon brought more deliveries, more non-tipping customers, more people who saw her only as a service, a utility, something less than human. By 6 o'clock, Elena had earned $41.16 total. She had spent $8 on gasoline and $2 on a bottle of water because her mouth had become so dry she could not swallow. She now had $27 total for the entire week. She owed rent. The electricity bill was 3 weeks overdue. Micah needed new shoes, his old ones had holes in the soles, and the doctor said his developing feet needed proper support because of the strain his heart condition would place on his growth. At 8:45 that evening, the rain came. Cold October rain that fell sideways, driven by wind that seemed to come from somewhere angry and raw. Elena had no rain jacket. She wore only the thin uniform jacket required by her delivery apps, a jacket designed for appearance, not function, which meant it was designed to fail. The rain soaked through in minutes. She was shivering so hard that her hand shook on the scooter's handles, making the last 3 deliveries dangerous, each turn a small prayer that she would not slide on the wet pavement, that she would not crash, that she would not end up in a hospital where they would want money she did not have to fix injuries she could not afford. By 9:15, she had completed 16 deliveries. She had earned a total of $53.31. She had spent $13.20 on gas and water. She had exactly $40 left. Not $40,000. Not $4,000. $40. She rode toward Sunset Boulevard where Mr. Chen kept his tamale cart every evening, rain or shine, summer or winter, serving the same 6 dishes from a cart he had owned for 32 years. He always let her buy on credit if she needed to, but Elena had never wanted to owe him anything. He was kind, which meant his kindness was precious, which meant it was not something to take for granted. Tonight, she bought 1 tamale for $4. That left her with $36. She ate it standing beside the cart, steam rising up into the cold air, the taste of corn and chicken and love folded into masa. Mr. Chen watched her eat and did not say anything, but his eyes held all the things he could not say. "How is Micah?" he asked finally. "Good," Elena said. "He is good." It was a lie that was also true. Micah was good, he was brave and funny and brilliant. He was also dying. Slowly, definitely, he was dying, and she could not save him. The men arrived at 9:32. 3 of them in leather jackets that cost more than Elena's monthly rent, their movements casual but threaded through with violence like wire through silk. One of them wore a gold chain around his wrist. Another had a tattoo on his neck, a name, or a warning, or both. "Protection," the first one said to Mr. Chen. "Every night you set up here, it costs protection. You know this." Mr. Chen did not argue. He had been paying this tax for 3 months already, ever since the territory shifted and new men decided that even an old man selling tamales was worth extracting money from. "I do not have much today," he said quietly. "Then you do not set up tomorrow," the second man said. And then the first man raised his fist. Elena did not think. She did not calculate the risk or measure the odds or consider what happened to people who stood against men like this. She simply moved. She abandoned her scooter on the curb, she did not even look back at it, and she put herself between Mr. Chen and the raised fist. She spread her arms wide, her body small but determined, a human shield made of nothing but a mother's desperation to prevent more suffering in a world already saturated with it. "Leave him alone," she said. Her voice was trembling like a candle in the wind, but it was steady in its meaning. "He has nothing. We both know he has nothing. And if you want money, you want someone with money. I am the one with possibilities. I work. I earn. I can pay. Leave him alone." One of the men laughed. It was the sound of someone who had never been told no, someone for whom the world was simply a series of objects to take from. He did not lower his fist. Instead, he swung it toward her face. The impact came like a blade. She felt the force of it travel through her skull, felt the sudden bloom of pain behind her right temple, felt the warm rush of blood beginning to seep down the side of her face. She did not fall. She did not move. She simply stood there, between the men and Mr. Chen, bleeding. "You have spirit," the man said. "That is unfortunate for you." They left eventually. They took what little money Mr. Chen had, $17, and they left, their footsteps echoing against the wet pavement like drums announcing the kind of world where people like Elena had no protection, no dignity, no recourse except endurance. Mr. Chen made her sit down. He pressed a cloth against her temple while she insisted she was fine, because lying about her own pain had become as natural as breathing. He refused to take money when she tried to pay for the tamale. He simply held her shoulder and looked at her with eyes that had seen too many people broken by the world, and she saw that he was afraid for her. She did not know why. She did not know that the men who had beaten her worked for one of the city's two major crime families, did not know that his territory had value, did not know that being beaten in front of a specific vendor was the same as announcing her location, painting a target on her back. She climbed back onto her scooter at 10:02 in the evening. Her temple was throbbing. Her uniform was soaked. She had one more delivery, a late-night order from the hospital, 3 energy drinks and 2 protein bars for a doctor working the night shift. The payment was $5. After expenses, that meant she would end the day with exactly $1.83. As she drove toward the hospital, dizzy from the blow to her head and from hunger that had become a permanent companion, she did not see the man watching her from the shadows of the lodge's stone balcony across the street. She did not see Alessandro Caruso, who at that moment was concluding a meeting about territory and money and violence, who had stepped outside to breathe air that was not thick with talk of murder, who had watched the entire scene unfold, the fist, the blood, the courage. She did not know that something in his chest had shifted. That 17 years of perfect, crystalline rage had found a crack in its surface. That he was already making the calculations in his mind about what would need to happen next, what would need to be corrected, what would need to be destroyed. She simply rode into the night, bleeding and exhausted and utterly unaware that her life had just been set on a collision course with the only person in Los Angeles dangerous enough to save her, powerful enough to destroy her, and broken enough to understand exactly what she carried in her heart. At 10:02 in the evening, Elena Voss climbed back onto her delivery scooter with one hand pressed against her temple. The bandage the lodge doctor had applied was already soaked through. Her uniform clung to her skin, wet from the October rain that had been falling all day, soaked through with sweat and fear. She had exactly one more delivery before midnight, 3 energy drinks and 2 protein bars for a doctor working the night shift at Children's Hospital. The payment would be $5. After gas expenses, that meant she would end the day with $1.83 to her name. She did not see the man watching from the shadows of the lodge's stone balcony across the street. Alessandro Caruso stood motionless in the cold October wind, his black wool coat buttoned precisely, his dark eyes tracking every movement she made. At 34 years old, he carried himself like a general surveying a battlefield, shoulders back, chin level, each breath measured. A thin scar ran from his left temple to his jawline, a permanent reminder of the night 17 years ago when his father had been executed on the marble floor of their family home. Alessandro had been 16. He had watched the blood spread across the white stone like spilled wine, had memorized every face in the room, had made a promise to himself that day. No mercy. No forgiveness. Only erasure. He had kept that promise for 17 years. But tonight, something had shifted inside him like a blade finding a crack in armor. He had watched Elena Voss take a fist meant for a man she did not know. He had seen her stand between violence and innocence with nothing but her own trembling body. He had seen courage that was not trained, not purchased, not programmed into her by family or circumstance. She had simply seen a man in danger and chosen to protect him. In 17 years, Alessandro Caruso had never witnessed anything like it. His Lieutenant Rocco appeared at the balcony door, shoulders broad beneath his tailored suit, gold Rolex catching the light. "Boss, we are needed inside." The wire transfer discussion about the Northern Territory. Later, Alessandro said without turning away from the street below. "Cancel it." Rocco's jaw tightened. In 15 years of working for Alessandro Caruso, he had learned to move quietly and obey without question. But cancelling meetings was not something the boss did. "So," I said, "cancel it." Elena's scooter disappeared into the rain. Alessandro waited until her taillights vanished completely before turning from the balcony. His men stood inside the Stone Lodge's great room, 12 of them arranged in chairs around the fireplace, their faces reflecting the orange glow of the flames. They had been discussing profit margins and territorial disputes and the delicate balance of power that kept Los Angeles divided among 3 crime families. Every man stopped talking when he entered. "Gentlemen," Alessandro said quietly, "we have a new priority. By tomorrow morning, I want everything. Financial records, medical files, family connections. There is a woman named Elena Voss. She works as a delivery driver. She has a daughter named Micah, age 6, with congenital heart disease. She is connected to Marcus Webb." He paused. "Find her, bring her here, and make sure no one at Children's Hospital knows she is missing. She needs to be able to come and go freely without drawing attention." The men exchanged glances but said nothing. This was not how Alessandro Caruso operated. He did not protect people. He eliminated problems, deleted obstacles, erased threats. He did not bring women to his private lodge. He did not concern himself with children. Rocco spoke carefully. "And if Marcus Webb objects?" Alessandro's expression did not change, but something in his eyes went perfectly cold. "Then Marcus Webb will need to learn the difference between leverage and mercy. We are about to teach him." Meanwhile, across Los Angeles in a luxury downtown apartment, Marcus Webb did not know any of this. Marcus was 31 years old and had never earned anything in his life. His uncle Victor Webb controlled the southern territories of Los Angeles, had built a multi-million-dollar operation on the backs of addicts and desperate people willing to transport his products. Marcus had been given a cushy job in hospital administration at Children's Hospital, a position that required almost no actual work but gave him access to something far more valuable than money. It gave him access to files, medical records, surgical schedules, the vulnerable, intimate details of people who had no choice but to comply when he held the power to destroy them. Elena Voss had been his best leverage yet. He sat at his desk at 10:33 p.m., Italian leather chair tilted back, his feet propped on mahogany that cost more than Elena earned in a year. In his hand, a glass of scotch that cost $60. On the screen in front of him, the hospital system. He had been monitoring Micah Voss's file for the past 2 years, watching as Elena scraped together every penny toward the $150,000 surgery her daughter could not live without. He had no conscience about using that. His phone buzzed. Elena's location, tracked through the delivery app. He pulled up her contact information and called. Elena answered on the second ring, her voice exhausted. "Marcus." "Elena, sweetheart, I need you to make one more delivery tonight." His voice was smooth, rehearsed, the tone of a man used to being obeyed. 10th Street Warehouse. Unit 7. There is an envelope inside. I need you to pick it up and take it to the docks. Elena was silent. He could hear the rain in the background, the wind, her breathing. Elena? Marcus, I cannot. Her voice was barely a whisper. I have been working for 16 hours. I have not eaten. I cannot do another delivery tonight. Marcus smiled. He loved this part, when they thought they had options. That is unfortunate. You know why? Because I was just reviewing little Micah's surgical file. The authorization from insurance. It is so fragile, Elena. So very fragile. One small administrative note from a hospital staff member, and suddenly there are complications. Questions. Investigations. Maybe the surgery date gets pushed back a few weeks. Maybe it gets cancelled entirely pending review. He paused to let that sink in. How much time do you think a 6-year-old with a failing heart valve has? A few weeks? Elena made a sound like something breaking inside her chest. I thought you would see it my way, Marcus continued. The envelope contains documentation. Nothing dangerous. You pick it up, you drive it to Bay Street at the docks, you leave it at the third loading dock at exactly 11:45. You will not see anyone. You will not speak to anyone. You will drive back to the hospital and deliver those energy drinks like nothing happened. Do you understand? Yes, Elena whispered. And Elena? If you think about refusing me, if you think about going to the police or telling anyone about our arrangement, I have already made copies of everything. Your name will be on every single package. Every single one. You will spend the next 15 years in federal prison, and Micah will grow up knowing her mother abandoned her for a crime. Is that what you want? The line went silent except for the sound of rain. Marcus hung up. 14 minutes later, Elena pulled into the 10th Street warehouse. The building was empty, industrial, the kind of place where no cameras recorded what happened inside. She found the envelope in Unit 7, sealed, thin, probably containing documents or photographs or something equally incriminating. She did not open it. She did not want to know. At 11:29 p.m., she completed the delivery to the docks. No one saw her. The envelope was placed exactly as instructed. She drove back to the hospital feeling like a ghost, like something inside her had died and she was just continuing through momentum. While Elena was at the docks, Cordelia Blackwood was preparing for bed in her penthouse apartment in the Wilshire district. Cordelia was 54 years old and had perfected the art of looking innocent while controlling everything. She wore her wealth-like armor, diamond earrings, Italian silk robes, a penthouse worth $7 million. Her husband had been a property developer before he died 10 years ago, leaving her with the perfect cover for every illegal dollar Marcus's uncle pumped through her real estate operations. Banks, government agencies, law enforcement, all of them saw Cordelia Blackwood and saw a wealthy widow philanthropist. What they did not see was the woman sitting at her desk at 11:43 p.m., reviewing financial records through a private server, noticing with cold precision exactly which people could be made useful and exactly which people had become liabilities. Elena Voss had started as useful. A desperate single mother with access to nothing, willing to run packages out of fear. Perfect leverage. Invisible. Expendable. But at 9 o'clock that morning, something had changed. Cordelia's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria, brought her the notification at 9:15 a.m. on the following day. A wire transfer had just posted to Children's Hospital Los Angeles in the amount of $150,000. Micah Voss's entire surgical bill, paid in full. The transfer came from an offshore account using routing numbers that required serious resources to set up. Someone was protecting Elena Voss. Cordelia set down her coffee with precision. Her hand did not tremble. Who, she said quietly, would have that kind of money and that kind of interest in a delivery driver? Victoria checked her files. I have no information about Elena's connections. She works alone. No family support. Her mother was estranged. She has no significant relationships, no boyfriend, no Find her, Cordelia interrupted. Find Elena Voss immediately. I want to know where she is right now, who she has been in contact with in the last 24 hours, and who has money to burn on complete strangers. And bring Marcus to my office. 20 minutes later, Marcus arrived at his mother's penthouse office. He was wearing an expensive suit that hung poorly on his thin shoulders, his hair gelled in a style from 5 years ago, his eyes carrying the glassy look of someone accustomed to getting whatever he wanted without effort. He stopped when he saw his mother's expression. Your leverage piece, Cordelia said without preamble, just received a $150,000 payment from an unknown source. $150,000. That is no coincidence. That is protection. That is someone with serious power interested in keeping her alive and healthy. Marcus's face went pale. I do not understand. How is that possible? She has no one. She is alone. Exactly, Cordelia said. Which means someone deliberately chose to help her? Someone who either knows about her situation or is about to. And if that person knows about Elena Voss, they may know about you. They may know about the packages. They may know about me. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at Los Angeles spread below like a conquered kingdom. We have two options now. Option 1, Elena Voss disappears. She becomes a trafficking victim. We have documentation, we have witnesses, we have everything we need. She goes to federal prison, your uncle goes untouched, and our operation remains secure. Option 2, we wait and the mysterious protector finds us. We wait and they dismantle everything. Marcus swallowed hard. What do you want me to do? Find her. Today. Bring her to me. And if she has already spoken to whoever paid her bill, we will need to make sure that information dies with her. The word her hung in the air like something poisonous. Back at Alessandro's mountain lodge, Elena woke at 7 in the morning in a bed softer than any she had ever slept in, her head throbbing with a dull ache where the doctor had stitched the wound from the attack. October sunlight filtered through the windows, weak, pale, struggling. Outside, the landscape was skeletal. Dead leaves covered the ground like the earth was dying from the inside out. She put her hand to her forehead and felt the bandage. Everything from the previous night came rushing back. The parking garage. Collapsing. The man who had caught her, who had told her his name was Alessandro Caruso. The paperwork he showed her this morning before she fell asleep. $150,000, wire transfer to Children's Hospital Los Angeles. Micah's surgery was scheduled for 5 days from now. Elena did not understand why he had done it. She got out of bed carefully, her legs shaking. She was wearing clothes that were not hers, soft pajamas in cream silk, probably expensive. Her delivery uniform was gone, cleaned or disposed of. She found her wallet on the dresser with her phone next to it, completely charged. She checked her messages. 23 missed calls from Marcus Webb. 47 text messages, each one escalating, each one more threatening than the last. The final one, sent at 6:04 a.m., Elena, you have 1 hour to respond or Micah's surgery gets cancelled and you get arrested for the packages we both know you delivered. Your choice. Contact me now. Elena's hand started shaking so violently she dropped the phone. The door to her room opened without a knock. Alessandro Caruso stood in the doorway, already dressed in a black suit and white shirt open at the collar, the scar on his face catching the morning light like a blade. He was 6'2", maybe taller, his shoulders filling the door frame. His eyes were storm gray and completely empty of emotion. You have seen the messages, he said. It was not a question. Elena nodded, unable to speak. You are not going to respond to them, Alessandro continued, walking into the room. You are not going to contact Marcus Webb. You are not going to go anywhere near him or his mother or anyone connected to them. Do you understand me? He will cancel her surgery, Elena whispered. He will destroy her file. He said. He said many things, Alessandro interrupted, because he believed you were helpless. He believed you had no protection. That belief no longer exists. He sat down on the edge of the bed, and something about the gesture, so casual, so certain, made Elena realize she was looking at someone whose power was so absolute he did not need to perform it. Your daughter's surgery is paid for. It is scheduled. It is going to happen in 5 days. No one at that hospital is going to touch her file. No one is going to delay her. No one is going to cancel anything. This is not because you asked. This is not because you are grateful. This is because I said so, and I have the power to make sure my words become reality. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dead landscape. Marcus Webb made a mistake, Alessandro said quietly. He thought leverage was power. He thought fear was control. He did not understand that fear only works when the person being threatened has no one more dangerous standing behind them. He turned to face her. You have someone now. And Marcus Webb is about to learn exactly how expensive his mistake has become. Elena stood there in her borrowed pajamas, the morning light pale and weak behind Alessandro Caruso, and understood that everything had just changed. Elena sat by the fireplace at the lodge, her body wrapped in a cashmere blanket that cost more than 3 months of her old rent. The fire crackled softly, the only sound in the vast room. Outside, the October afternoon had turned grey and heavy, clouds pressing down on the mountains like a weight that would not lift. Her phone sat on the cushion beside her, plugged in, fully charged for the first time in days. The messages had started arriving at 3:15 p.m. Marcus, you think paying that bill makes you untouchable. Marcus, I have evidence. Photographs. Delivery logs. Your signature on every single package. Marcus, unless you come to me by tonight, I am sending everything to the FBI. Elena's hands trembled as she read. The blanket fell away from her shoulders. Her breath came shallow, tight, like her chest was being crushed from the inside. She did not notice Alessandro enter the room until he was standing directly in front of her. He was still dressed in his morning clothes, a white silk shirt with the first 2 buttons open, dark trousers tailored to perfection, a gold watch catching the firelight on his wrist. His face was unreadable, carved from stone. But his eyes, those dark, penetrating eyes, went to her phone immediately. What is wrong? He asked. Elena could not speak. She simply handed him the phone, watching as he scrolled through the messages. With each line he read, his expression changed. Not into anger, something far more dangerous. A complete absence of emotion. The face of a man who had just made a decision that would end something, or someone. He pressed the phone to his ear and dialed. Marcus answered on the second ring, his voice bright, falsely confident. Elena, finally. Are you ready to do the sensible thing, or do I need to? This is Alessandro Caruso, he said quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. You have been threatening the wrong woman. The silence on the other end stretched like a blade being drawn. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had become small, uncertain. I did not know she was. We had an arrangement that predated. You forced her to deliver contraband, Alessandro continued, each word precise, final. You used her daughter's medical emergency as leverage. You threatened to destroy hospital records. You believed she had no one. That belief was a mistake. Marcus's voice climbed higher, desperation mixing with rage. Or what? Do you know who my uncle is? My family has connections you cannot. Tell me everything about what you forced her to do, Alessandro interrupted. Tell me about your mother's involvement. Tell me about every threat, every payment, every package. And if you lie to me, I will know, and what happens after that will make you regret every moment you spent breathing. I want my lawyer, Marcus said, but there was no strength in it. He was already broken. Alessandro hung up. He set the phone down on the side table and looked at Elena. His expression had not changed, but something in his eyes had shifted, a darkness that had been dormant had awakened. Pack nothing, he said. You are not leaving this lodge. Not until your daughter's surgery is complete. Not until I tell you it is safe. Alessandro, he has proof. He will? He will do nothing, Alessandro said. He walked to the window and stood there, perfectly still, silhouetted against the grey light. Marcus Webb made a choice when he threatened you. He will now understand the consequences of that choice. Elena wanted to ask what that meant. She wanted to believe him. But the phone sat on the table between them, and in her mind she could see federal agents, handcuffs, a prison cell, Micah growing up alone, calling someone else Mama. The clock on the mantel showed for 11 p.m. That night, at 11:33 p.m., Elena could not sleep. The guest room was too quiet, too warm, too safe. The safety felt like a lie. She left her bed and moved through the dark hallway in bare feet, past closed doors and paintings of dead ancestors, and out onto the terrace that overlooked the property. The October night was brutal. Wind cut across the mountains with teeth, carrying the smell of dry earth and dying things. Dead leaves scattered across the stone like small animals fleeing. The Los Angeles sprawl glittered far below, city lights that looked like cold stars in a dead sky. Elena's borrowed pajamas offered no protection. She did not care. She walked to the edge of the property where the land dropped away into nothing but darkness and distance. Her hands shook. Not from cold. From the weight of everything she was carrying. Alessandro had paid for Micah's surgery, the full $150,000 for the operation, the hospital stay, the medications afterward. But Marcus had proof. Photographs. Her signature on delivery logs. If he went to the FBI, she would go to prison. A felony conviction. Years taken from her life. Years Micah would spend growing up in foster care, believing her mother had abandoned her. Elena thought, maybe it would be better if I was not here. Maybe Micah would be safer without me. Maybe they would place her with someone stable, someone who does not make mistakes, someone who did not spend months delivering illegal packages because she was desperate and terrified and out of options. She took one step closer to the edge. Rocks skittered beneath her foot, tumbling into the darkness below. She could not hear them land. She closed her eyes. Then she heard a voice in her memory, small and clear as a bell. Micah's voice, from weeks ago. Before everything fell apart, Mama, when I get my new heart, can we go to the beach? Can we build a castle and not worry about money anymore? Elena's eyes snapped open. She stepped backward, away from the edge, and collapsed to her knees in the dirt. Her body convulsed with sobs, the kind of crying that came from the core of her, from the part of her that had been holding on for months, holding on with nothing but willpower and a child's voice in her head. She did not hear Alessandro approach until he was kneeling beside her in the dirt, his expensive trousers soiling, his shirt tearing slightly at the shoulder. He did not ask questions. He simply took off his coat, the black cashmere coat that likely cost more than her entire monthly salary used to be, and draped it around her shoulders. Whatever you are thinking, stop, he said. His voice was not gentle. It was commanding, absolute. Your daughter needs you alive. Do you understand me? Micah needs you alive. Elena looked at him through tears. Marcus will destroy me. Everything you have done. No one will destroy you, Alessandro said. He was kneeling in the dirt beside a woman covered in his coat, and his men would have not recognized him. I promise you that. On my father's name, I promise you. The next morning at 6:19 a.m., Alessandro made a single call from his office at the lodge. 12 men in black tactical gear began moving through Los Angeles simultaneously, like ghosts that had learned to breathe and walk. At exactly 7:11 a.m., they reached Marcus Webb's luxury apartment in downtown Los Angeles. The door opened without knocking. Marcus was in his kitchen, coffee cup in hand, when the intrusion began. He spun around, his face registering confusion before it registered fear. Rocco crossed the room in 3 strides and lifted Marcus by the throat, slamming him against the refrigerator with force that shattered the coffee cup. It fell to the tile in pieces. Marcus gasped, choking, his designer shirt tearing. What? Why? Marcus tried to speak, but Rocco's grip was absolute. "Alessandro Caruso sends his regards," Rocco said. Marcus tried to fight, soft, entitled, a man who had never faced real violence, whose power came from money and family name, not from strength or will. Rocco held him off the ground like a puppet with its strings about to be cut. Nino moved through the apartment with methodical precision. He found Marcus's laptop on the desk in the bedroom and began downloading every file, photographs of Elena, delivery logs, bank transfers, the evidence Marcus had been using as leverage. All of it. Gone. Downloaded. Transferred to encrypted servers run by men who served Alessandro Caruso. Marcus's protests turned to screaming as Rocco dragged him toward the door. "I am sorry. I am sorry. My uncle will pay. He will pay whatever you want." But there was no negotiation, no mercy possible. They brought him down the elevator, through the lobby, past morning commuters who stopped and stared as a man in a torn designer shirt was dragged to a black SUV, screaming, begging, every shred of his dignity evaporating into the morning air. The SUV door closed. Silence. At that same hour, 8:15 a.m., a second operation unfolded across the city. Cordelia Blackwood arrived at her office on Wilshire Boulevard in a black Range Rover, wearing a Chanel suit that cost $12,000. Her heels clicked on the marble lobby floor. She had spent 40 years building her reputation as a philanthropist, a society woman, a trustee of 3 major charities. That reputation was about to disintegrate in 60 seconds. FBI Special Agent Rodriguez stood waiting in the lobby, flanked by 4 other agents. Their badges were visible. Their expressions were not merciful. "Cordelia Blackwood?" Rodriguez asked. Cordelia, practiced in composure, tilted her head. "Yes." "Is there a problem?" "You are under arrest for money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy to traffic narcotics through legitimate business fronts," Rodriguez said. She held up a warrant. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Cordelia's face went white. Not red, not flushed with anger, white, the color of a person watching their entire world collapse in real time. "That is absurd," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. "I run a real estate firm. I am on the boards of charities. I host fundraisers. You cannot possibly." "We have 17 offshore accounts," Rodriguez interrupted, "traced through your properties. We have documentation of narcotics money being laundered through your supposed legitimate businesses. We have communication showing how you threatened a single mother, using her child's medical emergency as leverage to force her into delivering contraband." Rodriguez held up a file, thick, damning, filled with photographs and logs and evidence that had been downloaded from Marcus's apartment less than an hour earlier. "I want my lawyer," Cordelia whispered. "You will need several," Rodriguez said. The arrest was public. The FBI agents led her through the lobby while news cameras waited outside, their lights flashing, their cameras capturing every moment. Cordelia Blackwood, society woman, philanthropist, was placed in handcuffs in front of her own employees, her own colleagues, her own reflection in the gleaming lobby mirrors. By evening, her mugshot was on every local news channel. By morning, national outlets were running the story. By the end of the week, federal prosecutors were announcing her indictment for conspiracy, money laundering, racketeering, and threatening a witness. Marcus Webb's location became known 3 days later when his body washed up in the harbor of Long Beach. Not his body, that was not accurate. His location became known when a cargo ship bound for South America reported that one of its passengers had attempted to jump overboard and had been returned to port by authorities. Marcus was arrested at the dock, disheveled and terrified, screaming that he wanted to go to prison, that anywhere was better than where he had been taken. Alessandro watched the news reports from his office, a glass of red wine untouched on the desk beside him. At 5:36 p.m., he made a call to Elena at the lodge. "It is handled," he said, his voice steady, final. "Marcus Webb will never threaten you or Micah again. Cordelia Blackwood will spend the next 40 years in federal prison." Your daughter's surgery is in 4 days. No one will delay it. No one will interfere. You are free. Elena listened to his words and believed them. For the first time in months, she believed that she might actually survive this. That Micah might survive this. That some fragment of a life, a real life, not just survival, might still be possible. Outside the lodge, the October evening had finally cleared. The sky had turned a deep, complicated blue. Stars were beginning to emerge, one by one, like promises being kept. 6 months after the arrest of Marcus Webb and Cordelia Blackwood, the world had shifted beneath Elena's feet in ways she had not expected. Micah's surgery happened exactly 4 days after Alessandro made his call, on a Tuesday morning in late October when the hospital corridors hummed with machines and hope. Elena sat in the waiting room for 8 hours and 43 minutes, her hands folded so tightly her nails left crescents in her palms. The surgeon emerged at 3:51 in the afternoon, still wearing his blue mask around his neck, and the first thing he said was, "The valve replacement was perfect. Your daughter is going to have a normal life." Elena broke into pieces right there, collapsing into the plastic chair, crying so hard she could not breathe. A nurse brought her water. Another brought tissues. When they let her see Micah in recovery, small and pale beneath white blankets, still sleeping off the anesthesia, Elena knelt beside the hospital bed and whispered a prayer she had not said in 7 years. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." But what Elena did not understand, not yet, was that her liberation had only just begun. 3 weeks after Micah came home, Elena received a letter from UCLA's nursing program. Acceptance. Full scholarship. The letter stated it was merit-based, a recognition of her previous academic work and her demonstrated commitment to healthcare. Elena read it 4 times, convinced there had been some mistake. She called the admissions office. A woman named Dr. Patricia Chen confirmed everything. "Your application stood out immediately," the woman said, her voice warm through the phone. "You had excellent recommendations." Elena had given no recommendations. She had submitted her application alone, in her apartment at midnight, expecting nothing. Meanwhile, across the city in his office on the 42nd floor of a building that faced the Pacific, Alessandro Caruso sat behind a desk made of black marble and made one phone call. "Dr. Chen, this is Alessandro Caruso," he said. His voice moved through the receiver like cold water. "I am calling about Elena Voss. She will be attending your program. She will excel. If she does not, I will know. If she is not treated with absolute respect, I will know." Dr. Chen understood immediately. She had lived in Los Angeles long enough to know what that name meant. 2 months into Elena's first semester, she found a new apartment in Los Feliz, a neighborhood where children played in yards and the air smelled like jasmine instead of exhaust. The building was clean, the walls newly painted, the kitchen had real counter space. The landlord, an older man named Mr. Petrov, offered her a lease at $1,200 a month for a 2-bedroom that should have rented for $2,000. "I like you," he said simply, handing her the keys. "You have kind eyes." Elena did not know that Alessandro owned the building. That he had purchased it 6 months earlier specifically to create affordable housing in neighborhoods where people like Elena could actually survive. That Mr. Petrov had received instructions: if a woman named Elena Voss comes looking for an apartment, you rent to her at 40% below market. By February, Elena was working part-time at a medical clinic in Silver Lake, a position that fit perfectly around her class schedule. The position had appeared almost magically when she mentioned to a classmate that she needed work. The hiring manager, a woman named Jennifer, had called her in immediately. "You came highly recommended," Jennifer said. "I trust recommendations from certain sources implicitly." Elena believed she was simply getting lucky. That her life was finally shifting the way lives should shift when you worked hard, when you studied late into the night, when you refused to break even when breaking seemed like the only option left. What she did not understand was that every advantage she received had been orchestrated from the shadows by a man who watched her progress through weekly reports. Every week, Rocco would appear at Alessandro's office with an update. The girl is maintaining a 3.9 GPA, boss. Her instructors say she is among the top students they have seen in 3 years. Alessandro would nod, and Rocco would leave, and the boss would return to his work, his empire, the machinery of his underworld existence. But something had shifted in him too, though none of his men could quite name it. The coldness remained. The authority remained. But the hunger for destruction had changed shape. It was no longer about vengeance. It was about something else entirely. One afternoon in January, at 2:43 in the afternoon, Elena walked into a coffee shop in West Hollywood to study for her anatomy exam. Micah sat beside her at a small table by the window, coloring with markers, her new heart beating steadily beneath her ribs, her voice bright and clear as she narrated stories about her drawings. "This one is a fairy," she said, holding up a pink figure. "And this one is a prince, but he is sad, so the fairy is making him happy." 3 blocks away, Alessandro's black Mercedes moved through traffic on Sunset Boulevard. Through the tinted window, at a red light, the boss could see the coffee shop. He could see Elena, bent over her textbook, her hair pulled back, her face serious with concentration. He could see Micah, healthy and alive and coloring, the child's cheeks flushed with the natural pink of a girl who no longer struggled to breathe. For 17 years, since the night his father was murdered, Alessandro had not allowed himself to want anything that could be taken from him. Power could not be taken. Money could not be taken. But this small moment of a woman and a child learning to live again, this could be destroyed in an instant by the world he inhabited. The light turned green. "Keep driving," Alessandro told his driver, not looking at the coffee shop again. Rocco sat in the front seat and started to speak, but one look from his boss silenced him. Some things could not be explained in words. By March, Elena had survived her first semester with a 3.91 GPA. She had moved into her new apartment with Micah. She had learned that her daughter could run without stopping, could swim, could play soccer, could live like a normal child instead of a fragile thing that might break at any moment. And she had started to ask questions. The scholarship did not quite add up. The apartment was too cheap. The job had found her too easily. Elena began making phone calls, asking careful questions, searching public records. What she discovered was that a man named Alessandro Caruso owned the building where she lived. That he had connections to UCLA. That his name kept appearing in the periphery of her good fortune like a ghost that refused to leave. On a Tuesday evening, Elena found a card slipped under her apartment door. Cream-colored. Expensive. No name, no signature. Just an address and a time, come if you want answers. 6:06 p.m. March 15th. The address was in the mountains above Los Angeles. Elena recognized it immediately. The lodge. The place where she had defended Mr. Chen. The place where Alessandro Caruso had offered her his protection in the darkness of an underground garage. She made arrangements for her neighbor to watch Micah. But as she drove toward the mountains that evening, the weight of everything, 6 months of silent protection, 6 months of gifts she had not asked for, 6 months of a man she had tried not to think about, became too heavy to ignore. She turned the car around. She went home. She got Micah from her neighbor's apartment. "We're going to the mountains," she told her daughter. The little girl, now 6 years old and vibrant with health, asked no questions. She simply climbed into her car seat and chatted about the clouds as they drove up the winding road through the gathering darkness. The lodge appeared at 6:07 p.m., its lights glowing against the twilight sky. Elena parked her car. She helped Micah from her seat. They walked toward the entrance together, the child's hand in hers, the cool March air carrying the scent of pine and rain. Alessandro stood on the balcony where he had stood 7 months earlier, watching Elena defend a stranger with nothing but her own body. He saw her car pull up. He saw her emerge. He saw her help the child from the vehicle. And for the first time since his father's blood had soaked the carpet of his childhood home, the man felt something like hope move through his chest. They met in the main room. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Rocco and Nino had disappeared into the back of the lodge, leaving them alone. Micah climbed onto the leather couch, opened a children's book someone had left there, and began to read to herself, her small voice steady and sure. Elena stood facing Alessandro across the distance of the room, and the silence between them stretched like a held breath. "I have been rebuilding my life for 6 months," Elena said, her voice barely trembling. "Everything has been suspiciously easy. The scholarship. The apartment. The job. The connections. I started asking questions." "And what did you learn?" Alessandro's voice moved through the room like dark water. "That you have been protecting me from the shadows. That you paid for my daughter's surgery. That you destroyed the people threatening me. That you gave me space to start over. But you never came to see me. Why?" Alessandro looked at the fire, at the way the light moved across the flames. "Because you deserved a life without violence. Without looking over your shoulder. My world does not offer that." Elena stepped closer. "You thought I wanted distance from you. I thought you needed it." He turned to face her then. "I have spent 17 years building an empire on vengeance. I have spent 17 years telling myself that this world, blood and power and control, was all I could ever have. And then you stood between a stranger and a gun, with nothing but your own body as a shield. And something in me that had been dead for a very long time woke up." Elena crossed the distance between them. "For 6 months I have wanted to thank you. For 6 months I have thought about the man who saved my daughter's life and asked for nothing. I do not care what your world looks like, Alessandro. I care that when I had $5 and 7 days and no hope, you chose to help. Not because you wanted something from me, but because you saw me." "I did see you," Alessandro said. His eyes held hers. "I saw you when no one else would." Micah looked up from her book. Her new heart, the one that cost $150,000, beat steadily in her small chest. "Mama, is this the man you told me about? The one who gave me my new heart?" Elena smiled. "Yes, baby. This is him." Micah climbed down from the couch and walked to Alessandro. She looked up at him with eyes that had learned to trust again. "Thank you for saving me," she said simply. Alessandro knelt down to her level. His men would not have recognized him in this moment. "You are very welcome, Micah. You have a very strong heart." That night, as the fire burned lower and the mountain wind moved through the valleys below, Elena, Micah, and Alessandro sat together in front of the flames. Not a traditional ending. Not a conclusion, but a beginning. In the glow of the firelight, a man who had been built entirely of vengeance learned that some power comes from choosing to protect the defenseless. And a woman who had been invisible learned that her courage had been seen all along. This is what we must understand: sometimes the person who has nothing is the person who has the most to give. A single act of courage, offered freely, can ripple through lives in ways we never predict. Elena defended a stranger with her own body. Alessandro saw that courage and chose to protect her, expecting nothing in return. She rebuilt her life. He learned to feel again. And Micah got the chance to become who she was always meant to be. After the rain, the sky clears. And sometimes miracles come from the most unexpected places. If this story touched your heart, please drop a like right now. Share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Subscribe so you never miss these stories about love, loyalty, and redemption. Comment below, what would you have done in Elena's position? Have you ever had someone protect you from the shadows? Every comment you leave is a precious source of motivation that helps us continue creating these meaningful stories for you. We wish all of you watching good health, joy, and days filled with peace and happiness. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.